Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining me again today, and welcome to Total War Warhammer 2. Wow, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been months. And this is kind of the game that's brought me back from YouTube death. I've been playing Total War games for a very long time. For any who don't know, Total War is a game series where you play real-time battles interspersed with a turn-based strategy mode. And Total War Warhammer is the continuation of that series that came out last year, the first one, and then the second one just this year, where you play in the fantasy realm of Warhammer. I'm going to be talking about some replays of some battles that I've had playing the multiplayer battles in this game, because I love them. I just love them to bits. They're not the usual thing that I've done. They're not turn-based. They're not kind of slow strategic things. As you can say, this whole battle only lasts about 8 minutes up there. But I think they're very, very, very fun. And there is a surprising amount of strategy involved. So I am going to assume that you know basically how Total War works, you know, melee attack, melee defense, weapon strength, etc. I'll talk about some of the little intricacies as I go along. Let's start by introducing the armies, shall we? So I'm over here. I am playing the perfidious Ratmen, the Skaven, the evil creatures that lurk below in the Under Empire in the sewers. And I have brought a fairly traditional Skaven army in some ways. So the Skaven basically they have a whole lot of crappy infantry of just very numerous, very weak units, like these clan rat spears. You can look at their stats over there on the left side of the screen. You notice their melee attack is very, very low. This is a game where a decent infantry unit has melee attack in the high 20s or 30s even. Their melee attack is very low. Melee defense, okay. Weapon strength, kind of low. The only thing they really have going for them weapon strength-wise is this bonus versus large. In Total War Warhammer, bonus versus large acts as a bonus both to the damage they do and to their melee attack against those targets. So bonus versus large means they're better against anything cavalry-sized, horse-sized, or bigger. But against infantry, they're just garbage. Their charge bonus is terribly, terribly low. Their armor is low. Their leadership is middling at best. Basically, clan rat spears are not very good at anything, but they're cheap. So you can bring a lot of them. So I have these clan rat spears, clan rats, clan rats, clan rat spears, all of those very, very cheap. I've interspersed them with a much more expensive and more effective infantry. So here's those clan rat spears. Look at those filthy rat men. Aren't they fantastic? I've interspersed them with plague monks. Plague monks are quite a bit more expensive, and they're quite a bit more effective. If you compare the two, clan rat spears have more health and a little bit more armor, but plague monks have much, much better leadership, which means that they will run away much slower. They'll stand up, fight a lot more. Melee attack, much better. Melee defense, about the same. Weapon strength, significantly higher, and they have a bonus versus infantry. So in the straight-up infantry fight, they're going to do even better than it looks like they will. Also, their charge bonus is pretty good. Down here, you see special abilities. All Skaven have these two, all Skaven infantry at least. Strength in numbers, which means that when they have high health, hit points here, when they're above half, they're a little bit slower, but they get a leadership and melee defense bonus, and then scurry away, which means when their leadership is low, when they're wavering, when they don't want to fight anymore, they get faster. So their speed is already pretty high for an infantry unit, but when their health drops below half, they get a big speed boost, and then when their leadership drops below half, they get another big speed boost. So if you beat these guys up, they can run away very, very quickly. So I've interspersed cheap, crappy units with middle-cost, pretty effective anti-infantry units all along my line. I have a pretty long infantry line. And then the really cool things about the Skaven start happening after we talk about the infantry. Over here, I have some gutter runners. Gutter runners are a fascinating unit. They're kind of a hybrid. Stats-wise, they have a missile attack at a fairly short range. A long-range archer will have maybe 160 to 180. They have a range of 70, so fairly short range. Decent damage, and they do a little bit of armor-piercing damage, which is nice. But what's most interesting about them is they're fast, speed of 48, which is fast for an infantry unit. They have an ability called, Snare Net. Whenever anyone gets close to them, they reduce that unit's speed. So they reduce their speed and their charge speed by 24%, which is pretty big. And what this basically means is slow cavalry. There are several cavalry units in the game that have speed like in the 60s. Those units can't actually catch gutter runners. You know, normally cavalry are kind of the counter to skirmish infantry like this because they can run them down. Cavalry cannot run gutter runners down very effectively. And then, also, gutter runners' melee stats are pretty decent. 26, 32, 14 charge bonus, 28 weapon strength. They're not bad as infantry. They have fewer models than like clan rats do. But otherwise, they do pretty well. So these guys can actually kite away from enemy units that are chasing them and throw knives at them for a while to weaken them, and then turn around, charge in, and crush them. I have 3 units of gutter runners, 1 there, and then 2 hidden up here in the woods, because gutter runners can deploy all over the battlefield. They have vanguard deployment. And they have stalk, which means that the enemy cannot see them until they get pretty close. On top of that, they have a physical resistance of 30%. So up here, their armor, which normally reduces damage, very low. Physical resistance straight up negates a third of the damage that comes at them. So their effective armor is actually much higher, is actually about 70 or so, which is not bad. Then in the back line, I have 2 assassins, which are melee heroes. So these are little single model units as opposed to having 120 or whatever. They have very high melee attack, lots of damage, very low armor, but they also have that 30% physical resistance, and they have a couple of key abilities. They have trophy heads, which you can drop on enemy single model units, heroes and lords, to drop their defense and attack by a lot. And they have concealment bombs, which isn't terribly useful. It means they can hide effectively, but the way I'm using them, I don't need to do that. And they have the Rival Hide Talisman, which in a pretty wide area around them drops all enemies' melee attack for about half a minute by a lot, like almost down to 0. Which means that these assassins have 2 very important functions. 1, they can use trophy heads on enemy heroes that are trying to attack my general and stop them and wear them down with their high damage. And 2, they can use the Rival Hide armor, whatever it's called, Rival Hide Talisman, in the infantry line to make the enemy infantry suck for a while so that my infantry can fight them very effectively. Over here I have Warp Lightning Cannons. Look at them. Aren't they the best? They're the best. They have a little guy at the front with a spyglass. Isn't he adorable? Anyway, Warp Lightning Cannons fire very straight. They're reasonably accurate, not the very most accurate. Oops, buttons. Not the very most accurate in the world, but reasonably accurate. They do a ton of damage, and they have a huge bonus versus large. So that 194 damage, well, they actually only fire about every 20 seconds. So their actual damage is over 300. And then when you add in the 70, it's almost 400 against large targets. So large targets like this. That dragon is a large target. That blood cauldron, that death hag is a large target. That kind of thing. So they're very, very good at sniping enemy large units. And then I have a Doom Wheel. And a Doom Wheel is a heavily armored chariot-like unit that runs around, and it also spits lightning from these little lightning doodads it has. It has, if you look at it, weapon strength, very high, excellent bonus versus infantry, so it can absolutely wipe out infantry. Very high armor, good leadership, fast, and it has this missile attack that's armor piercing and does a lot of damage, and has 52 ammunition. It's magical attack. This is just a very, very powerful unit. It has to be really focused down in order to be killed. So that's my army. Line of cheap to mediocre infantry. And of course my Grey Seer, my leader, on the Screaming Bell. So he's a Grey Seer of Ruin. Spell-wise, magic is a huge part of Warhammer, of course. He has a couple of buffs. He causes fear. He has this aura that buffs up everybody around him by a little bit. He has a thing he can cast that buffs them up more. Every time he's casting a spell, the enemy gets debuffed. He has this thing. It's a spell he can just use because he's on the bell. It doesn't cost any magic. Unholy Clamor, that's the castable one. It gives a huge leadership buff to all the Skaven units near him. Spell-wise, he has the dreaded 13th spell, which I don't think I actually use in this battle, but it causes an explosion and then spawns a unit of high-quality infantry out of it. Warp Lightning, which is cheap. It costs 6 magic, and has a very low cooldown and just blasts enemies with lightning. It's pretty effective. Howling Warp Gale, which pins enemy flying units in place for up to half a minute if you overcast it. Death Frenzy, which buffs your infantry. And Crack's Call. Arcane Conduit, which lets him get more magic. And Crack's Call, which is an expensive spell that causes a ton of damage. It's a wind spell. So you point it in a direction, it causes damage in a line in that direction. The enemy army, they're playing the Dark Elves. Much higher quality on average, but smaller. He's got a front line of these Black Ark Corsairs. These are kind of the equivalent of my Plague Monks. They're a little bit different in that they have high armor, so they're relatively well protected. No shields, though, so missiles will still do a number on them. Much higher leadership, pretty good speed, good melee attack, good decent melee defense. Weapon strength, okay, and with a bonus versus infantry. Charge bonus a little lower than the Plague Monks. They're a little cheaper than the Plague Monks, and overall they lose against them one-on-one, but they're still quite solid. So that's his front line, 4 units of them. In the back he has these Dark Shards. They have relatively low range for an archer, only 125, but their missile damage is armor piercing, which is really useful in a lot of matchups. Now, it's less useful against me because, as the Skaven, most of my units just don't have much armor. 25, 10. The Grey Seer has a lot of armor on the Bell. The Doom Wheel has a lot of armor. The Gutter Runners don't. They have physical resistance, so armor-piercing damage does nothing against them. But Dark Shards are overall pretty decent. In melee, they suffer badly, because their melee stats are absolutely awful. He's got these Dread Spears on the flank, basic spear infantry. They're good against large targets. They have silver shields, which means they block a lot of missile fire. He has Witch Elves in the back. Witch Elves, they're a good melee unit. They're very, very fragile because they have no armor, literally none. 5 points. Physical resistance of 32%. This counts... Yes, this counts a buff that's given by that. I'll talk about that Death Hag in a minute. And their leadership is very high, their speed is very high, their damage is very high. This is the important thing. When they hit an enemy unit, they cause it to rampage, which means it goes out of control, you can't pull it out. It's just going to fight until this wears off, which is sometime after it kills the last Witch Elf or dies. So these guys the Witch Elves are very, very good, very, very non-safe for work also, but they're very, very good at getting a valuable enemy unit stuck and keeping it from pulling away so that you can then attack it with whatever you want in your army. They also, I think, have a bonus versus infantry. Yeah, they have a bonus versus infantry of 8, so they're excellent infantry mulchers, but like I said, super, super fragile. And then he has over here, these are his elites, the Harganath Executioners. A great sword infantry, also have a bonus versus infantry, and it's big. A bonus versus infantry of 14. Effectively, against infantry then, their melee attack is 52, which is huge, and their weapon damage is 56, most of which is armor piercing. So they do a huge amount of damage versus infantry. They're not very good against anything else. They do have very high armor, very high leadership, 95 at the moment, but their speed isn't impressive, and they're easily focus-fired. If you can take them out by any means other than throwing armored infantry at them, basically, they won't make back their cost because they're very expensive. And of course, in multiplayer battles like this, you have limited resources to spend. He has the Death Hag on a Blood Cauldron, which, look at that, that's so cool. It's got these witches hanging off it. It has the little pool of blood there. The Blood Cauldron lets it drop a lot of these area of effect buffs, like the Blood Shield of Cain, which gives 12% physical resistance to everything nearby, all friendly units nearby, rather. It has poison attacks, which debuff anyone it hits. Decent HP, decent armor, very good leadership, decent stats, bonus versus infantry of 20, so once again, this is an infantry killer, and a very high charge bonus. On top of that, he has Witch Brew, which lets him buff himself significantly at the cost of rampaging. Potion of Foolhardiness, which makes him unbreakable, so he won't run away while that's in effect. Couple of Foe Seeker, which is a decent ability that increases speed and decreases fatigue, which penalizes you. Fury of Cain, which means he can send one of his own units into a murderous frenzy. He has this Hex that debuffs all of my units around him. Frenzy, that's a self-ability. That's the physical resistance. And then this also causes Terror, which will make my low leadership rats, remember, my leadership in the front line is like 68, but that's significantly buffed. More like, over here, 56. These guys will run away if the Death Hag gets near them. And then he's led by Malekith on a Black Dragon. And I'm sorry, everything in this game just looks amazing. I have to look at it. Real quickly, Malekith has excellent stats across the board. He's very, very good at what he does. He causes terror. He has this breath attack, Noxious Breath. He can drop on people and just do a ton of damage. And of course he has spells. Gaze of Malice, he can blast somebody with. It's a cone. Soul Stealer, which lets him suck health out of somebody else. and give them back to him. Doom Bolt, which is like a homing rocket. Blade Wind, which is a vortex spell that moves across the battlefield and just chews up whatever it's dropped on. And Word of Pain, which is a huge debuff he can drop on somebody to make them basically worthless for a while. Plus, of course, Chill Wind, which is a cheap wind spell. It does a little bit of damage. Nothing too terribly impressive, but pretty decent. He can hurt himself to regain more magic, and he has that Noxious Breath, like I said. And he also debuffs enemy armor anytime he casts a spell, which is pretty cool. And he causes terror and fear. He has physical resistance and missile resistance. So very, very hard to take down. Very fast on his flying mount. Very high stats. Lots of damage, most of which is armor piercing. High charge bonus. Generally very dangerous. But in this configuration, I think Malekith costs upward of 3,000 points in a game mode where you only have about 12,000 to spend. So that's a lot of his army. So, strategy-wise, the Dark Elves have taken a whole bunch of infantry, some backup ranged units, and the Death Hag. Their obvious strategy is they're just going to rush forward at me and try to overwhelm me with a frontal charge while Malekith flies around taking out targets of opportunity. My strategy as the Skaven is a little different. I have an okay front line that can hold out for a while, especially when buffed by the Grey Seer and backed up by the Assassins, but mainly I'm going to be depending on other things. These guys basically exist to hold, to live for a while and stop everybody from charging through to my back lines. The Warp Lightning Cannon can put out some serious hurt if I use it right. The Doom Wheel can do a ton of damage because it's so hard to kill, and it moves so fast and it hurts infantry so much. He took no cavalry. If he had taken some... The Dark Elves have a cavalry unit called Cold One Knights. They're armor piercing and they have an anti-large bonus. They could have been very, very good against the Doom Wheel. He doesn't have any. So the Doom Wheel has nothing that can stop him on this field except Malekith and maybe the Death Hag. My Gutter Runners, meanwhile, can skirmish all day long. They have physical resistance, they have decent missile attacks, they slow anybody down who comes near them, and the Black Ark Corsairs have no shield, so they can just come in, wreck shop, dart away, no problem. That third unit will be coming up to join the first two. And my Grey Seer, of course, will be running around casting spells and just kind of trying to stay alive. I put him on the Screaming Bell partially for the passive abilities, but also, look at that ogre who's pulling the chain. Ew, gross. He's having the time of his life. That's the Grey Seer up there on the bell. Hey, buddy. But also because it gives him 100 armor and it about doubles his hit points. So it makes him very, very durable. As long as he can stay alive, I'm still in the fight. If he dies, all my units will take a huge morale penalty from their general dying and probably run away. So, that's enough of me talking. Let's get this on the road. So, over here, I'm examining the situation. The Warp Lightning Cannon is starting to pick targets. Over here, the Gutter Runners are about to... Yep, there they go. They're moving in. And as I said, the whole Dark Elf army is just charging forward. Malekith, meanwhile, is flying over towards the woods, thinking, oh, maybe there's something over there. He can't see these Gutter Runners yet, but he knows. He figures there's something in the woods. So over here, they're still not visible. This Doom Wheel is moving out to the flank. Now he's seen them. They're moving back, and the Gutter Runners are going to start peppering Malekith. Like I said, Malekith's pretty durable, but with only 80 armor and no shield, he does take reasonable damage from those volleys. See, he's lost a couple hundred hit points already, and Malekith decides there's no percentage in that. He's just going to fly away. Perfectly reasonable. My third Gutter Runner is coming up to join because I noticed this is pretty much the whole army. I'm looking at it kind of trying to count points. No cavalry, so I don't have to worry about guarding the Lightning Cannon just yet. The Gutter Runners are now moving up, skirmishing these Black Arcs a little bit. He's got his Dark Shards coming over. They get off a decent volley here, but the Gutter Runners just don't take a huge amount of damage from it, and now the Lightning Cannon is starting to fire into the flank of these Dark Shards and the Black Arc Corsairs, scoring 10 kills with the first volley. Not bad. The Doom Wheel's just over here on the side, waiting for its moment. The Dark Shards are still moving up, but now this is exactly what I wanted the Gutter Runners for. While the Lightning Cannons continue to fire, take down his ranged ability, they are wrecking this unit of Black Arc Corsairs. Absolutely annihilating them. Crossbow bolts coming in, I don't care. The Gutter Runners are taking no casualties and starting to inflict losses. These Black Arc Corsairs are down to half health already, and they're not going to be much use in the infantry fight. Meanwhile, the lightning keeps coming in. I should have been targeting these Harganneth Executioners, probably. But I wasn't. I got a few of them with collateral damage, but I'm actually targeting this unit of Dark Shards because I just didn't notice these guys. Keep in mind, I never promised I was a great player. So now, Infantry lines are closing in. The main fight is about to start. This unit is wrecked. It's worthless. Its leadership is already down to 2. It's at half models and about a quarter health. It's gone. I don't have to worry about it. The gutter runners will handle it. The lightning cannons are still firing. I'm going to have to kind of move my target back. The Doom Wheel's still waiting out to the side, and Malekith is starting to come in for his first attack run. Slowly. Over here, this is a Crack's Call, and... wait for it. There we go. Look at that damage. Witch Elves down less than half. Dark Shards hurt. Other Dark Shards kind of clipped by it. So the infantry fight is actually going well. My Plague Monks are very, very good, but the Death Hag just burst right through, calling down some Warp Lightning on the front line, sending forth both the Assassins to get at the Death Hag. It's going to pull back before the Assassins get there. Now, the enemy crossbows are starting to fire, but my Doom Wheel burst through a unit of spears and into the crossbows. It's just going to be running around wreaking havoc for a while, spitting lightning in all directions. The Gutter Runners over here are taking out a unit of Dread Spears that's coming after them. Over here, these Clan Rat Spears are rampaging because the Witch Elves hit them, but the Witch Elves don't really want to be wasting that on Clan Rat Spears. I mean, they're worthless. Doom Wheel's just having fun. 24 kills already, taking out 2 units of infantry simultaneously. These Warp Lightning Cannons really should have retargeted by now. This was a big mistake on my part. If you notice, they are still firing at this unit of Dark Shards that's almost destroyed already. They should have been firing at the Death Hag. They could have hit it, because it's taller than all the infantry, and taking some damage off this thing would have been super useful. Malekith is flying over the battlefield. My Gutter Runners have charged into those spears and wrecked them, and now they're sweeping down the flank, going after Malekith. I have hit Malekith with Howling Warp Gale, which is a spell that makes him unable to move. And now the Lightning Cannons are targeting Malekith in an effort to do some damage, as well as the Gutter Runners. Unfortunately, the Gutter Runners are all clumped up. They're kind of interfering with their own shots. So Malekith is not taking nearly as much damage as he should have. I dropped a Scorch there along the Dark Elf line. Kind of hit some of my own units. Don't really care. They're just rats. The Doom Wheel, 45 kills, still going strong. Those spears are being annihilated, despite their anti-large bonus. Malekith is now coming over here to end the Lightning Cannons. He takes a couple of good hits there. He's going to kill them. At this point, I don't mind. They've done their damage. My Grey Seer is in the back chasing off some archers along with the Doom Wheel, both of them just careening around having a good time smashing archers. In the front lines, my Assassins are still trying to kill the Death Hag. They've dropped Rivalhide Talisman, they've dropped Trophy Heads, so they've debuffed the attack of all these units. This is how good Rivalhide Talisman is. Those Hargoneth Executioners, right now they have a melee attack of 3. They're doing 0 damage. Black Ark Corsairs, melee attack of 1, also 0 damage. Witch Elves, melee attack 3. Rivalhide Talisman is fantastic for these infantry blob fights. Unfortunately, even though the Death Hag's melee defense is 0, the armor and HP is just enough that it's not taking much damage. And also, if you'll notice, when the Death Hag fights the Assassins, it just smashes them over and over, sends them flying, yep, like that, sends them flying back. They just can't do anything about it. That was a chill wind that hit nothing. I'm not sure what Malekith was trying to do there. I'm calling down more lightning onto the Hargoneth Executioners. They've only done 30 kills so far, and I would like to keep it that way. Malekith dropped a Blade Wind over here that missed because my Gutter Runners were already moving. My Doom Wheel came through the back of the Hargoneth Executioners, got an excellent charge, did some damage, while my Gutter Runners are driving off the remnants of the archers. I didn't need all 3 units here, I should have pulled one back. My Grey Seer, he tried to hit me with a Noxious Breath. Didn't really work all that much. I popped my buff. I'm not sure why, because I'm pretty far away from any of my units. Here, my Doom Wheel's chasing off some Black Ark Corsairs, while Malekith attacks the Grey Seer, who is just running for his ratty little life. Low HP, in serious jeopardy, but as long as he keeps moving, Malekith can't really hurt him too badly. My units are starting to break, but I've crushed most of the Dark Elf infantry at this point. My Assassins are coming back in an effort to deal with the Death Hag. Malekith has gotten distracted and is coming in to save the Death Hag, who doesn't really need saving, to be honest. But here comes the Doom Wheel again. Boom! Those Executioners were not paying attention, and they suffered the consequences. My Gutter Runners are all coming back in a big blob. A little bit low on ammunition. They do have some, but that was what Malekith was looking for. Look at those kill numbers climb. He just tore those 3 units apart with that Blade Wind. But at this point, they don't really care. Their morale is still staying steady. The Death Hag and Malekith are pretty much all that's left at this point. He does have a few Executioners. A bunch of my units have routed, but they will come back because the Grey Seer is still alive, still casting magic. I'm concentrating my fire on the Death Hag because Malekith is so hard to hit when he's flying. I just don't feel like it's worth it when instead I could take a whole bunch of health off the Death Hag. My units are coming back over there. I want to kill the Death Hag in order to get it off the field because, of course, the more of my army I have on the field compared to the less of his, there goes the Doom Wheel again, those Executioners just cannot handle it. The more of my army I have on the field and the less of his, the better the balance of power looks. And if the balance of power gets too far in one-sided, it gets too far towards my side, his other units will just run. That was a decent chill wind, but at this point it was too little, too late. The Gutter Runners are showering Malekith with bolts. All of his units have routed except for that Dark Shard. All of those units are wavering. They're starting to come back, but not doing too well. He's desperately trying to kill my Grey Seer, but when the Grey Seer is running, he is so hard to kill on this Screaming Bell. The Bell is fast enough that he can just run away from his problems forever. Malekith's been trying to kill him for minutes now, and it's just not working. Malekith, this was an interesting choice on the part of my opponent. Malekith dropped Power of Darkness right now, which would give him more magic in order to cast more of those spells like that devastating Blade Wind that got him 40 or 50 kills earlier. But it causes damage to him, and Malekith's leadership is already really low, partially because he's taken so much damage. And he's surrounded, of course, which is, attacked in the rear, attacked in the flank, exposed flanks. All those penalties are basically surrounded. So he's losing a lot of leadership. Now he wants to lose more HP. I don't think this was a good choice. I think Malekith might have been able to stay in the fight a little bit longer if he hadn't done that. I've gotten my Warp Lightning Cannon back online. There's only one of them left. Two of them were destroyed by Malekith's charge earlier, but if the battle goes on long enough, that could be useful. It's not going to. We've got 30 seconds left. A couple of his units are starting to come back, but they're wavering and so badly damaged. Back here, they're starting to rally a little bit. He's got his Dark Shards back, shooting me in the back, but Malekith is surrounded, unable to do anything. The Doom Wheel comes in, lands a good charge, does a bunch of damage, and now with trophy heads on him and his defense down to 7, he's taking damage from all those little tiny pitiful units around him. They're just chipping him down. Malekith breaks, and the whole army goes as soon as he goes. So that is a victory against the Dark Elves. If we look at the kill numbers, they paint sort of an interesting picture. Looking at the Dark Elf army, Malekith did a huge amount of work, 128 kills. The Death Hag also did a lot of work with 127. The Dread Spears accomplished nothing. One of those units was kited to death by Gutter Runners, one of those units was hit by the Doom Wheel, and Dread Spears can't deal with Doom Wheels. The Black Ark Corsairs did decently overall. I think this unit was the one that was kited by the Gutter Runners and took a ton of damage before ever getting into the fight. This unit, not sure what happened, might have just run face first into a Plague Monk while these two were fighting Clan Rats, in which case that makes sense. The Witch Elves did okay, probably didn't make back their cost because they were fighting cheap Skaven infantry. The Executioners got absolutely shut down. Between the magic and the Doom Wheel charges and not being microed, they did not accomplish what they needed to do. 38 kills against the Skaven will not pay for a unit of Hargoneth Executioners. And aggressive use of the Gutter Runners and the Doom Wheel kept these Dark Shards and Dark Shards with shields from accomplishing anything with their ranged fire. 4 kills, 2 kills, 1 kill. They put a little bit of damage on my Grey Seer, but not enough to justify them. So overall, the Black Ark Corsairs, decent choice against Skaven. Witch Elves, probably okay. Executioners, a little bit too vulnerable, and ranged units have to be well protected or they'll be destroyed by these guys. On my side, the Grey Seer didn't get many kills at all. That's fine, because he doesn't exist to get kills. He exists mainly to stay alive, give morale boosts to the army, and throw around those damage spells. Now, the Warp Lightning kills, for some reason, are not counted. So he actually killed a whole bunch of these Hargoneth Executioners with lightning that didn't get counted there. His actual kills are probably around 40 or 50, which is great. Assassins, also not many kills, but they mainly existed to put pressure on this Death Hag and to keep the Death Hag away from the Grey Seer, which they did very effectively. Also, they boosted up the infantry line and hurt all these guys' defense. at critical points in the battle. So I'm very, very happy with them. Clan Rats, they exist to die. They died. That's fine. Clan Rat Spears, same thing. Plague Monks, decent job. Gutter Runners, very, very good. Most of these kills were with range damage, and then when they melee attacked the Dark Shards. I don't think people at this point expect Gutter Runners to launch melee attacks. They think of them as skirmishers. They're not. They're light infantry that can also skirmish, which means they're perfect for charging into archers. And of course, the Doomwheel just wrecked house continuously. 112 kills, running back and forth, routing units over and over. Doomwheel is my favorite. Warp Lightning Cannon, pretty decent. Didn't probably make back its money because most of those kills were archers and Black Ark Corsairs and Spearmen and things, but not bad. And it did put some good damage on Malekith, so I like it. So, in any case, thanks for watching, guys. That's the battle. So you see I deployed 1,000 troops, or about 1,100, lost 600. KGB Baby deployed 837, lost 600. So I came out, it was a Pyrrhic victory, but I came out on top. So thanks for playing, KGB Baby. That was a great game. I'd love to run into you again sometime on multiplayer. And thanks everybody for watching. I will be doing a few more of these just because I really enjoy this game and I like talking about it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.